There's no way.
Winters is a true star. During her career, she's appeared in over 150 motion pictures. She has twice won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her work in A Patch of Blue and the legendary The Diary of Anne Frank. She is the author of 2 best-selling autobiographies. A third is on the way, and these days you can see her both in a recurring role on Roseanne and in 2 new movies entitled Heavy and The Portrait of a Lady. It's nice to see you not walking on the street in Beverly Hills, and thanks for joining us here at CBS tonight.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Last night there was a young actress here named Bonnie Hunt who won an award for the first time, and she told a story, and I don't know if it's true or not, about you whipping out an Oscar one time and saying, "I can act." Did she get it right?
Sort of, but you know, when was the last time we did this together? You were doing a show.
I did a show for ABC Radio, and we were together.
No, not radio. It was television.
The
Just
Tomorrow
you and
Show
me.
on NBC would be about 20 years ago now.
Is it that long?
Yes, it was.
Oh. Well, let me tell you what really happened.
You were 29 and I was 32.
Yes. All right. It was a film called Awakening,
Oh, sure.
and I got the sense that they sent me a videotape of the real woman, and they sent me the script. And then I had a sense that the casting lady was going to ask me to read from the phone call, and I felt that enough people knew about my acting. If Penny Marshall, who was the director, was going to ask me to read, that was okay with me. So at a last moment, I put my Oscar in my purse. And as I talked to her, I thought that she was going to do that. And I'd done 100 movies at that point, I guess. And I took it out of my purse and said, "I think there's a lot of people around here who think I can act."
Bravo.
But I don't know whether it was a wise thing. I think every casting director in town hates me for that. But it's their way of they want to be sure before they present someone to a director, producer, and I guess that's what they have to do.
If they can't be sure with Shelly Winters, who can they be certain with, huh?
Well, my agent made me feel better because he told me Charlton Heston was up for a part, and they asked him to read.
Jeez.
So, I don't know. Maybe it's a new world.
In reading the entertainment papers here in Los Angeles today, there was a short item that you're giving away a Brando bust. You're getting rid of it.
Well, I'm not getting rid of it. It was in a place of honor in my house. It was a statue of his head that I've had for many years of him doing Mark Anthony. And he's a great actor. In the last few years, he's had terrible traumas in his life. I know that. But he went on Larry King's show and used anti-Semitic dialogue, which upset me terribly because I had great respect for him, and I know him since the Actor Studio days, which I think are 1948, when I was in Oklahoma and he was in A Streetcar Named Desire. Everything I've known about him till this minute has been he defended minorities.
Well, look at the work he did on behalf of Native Americans,
yes,
the American
Indian. Native
African Americans.
African Americans, and many other things
Sure.
that he doesn't talk about. So I was stunned to hear that. I just don't want it in my house anymore, and I've given it to the Anti-Defamation League, who are going to raffle it off. They defend all minorities who are defamed, and I just feel so. I felt so clobbered by it because it was somebody I respected and admired. And I think I have to say to myself, he's had a couple of years of agony.
Well, he's had terrible tragedy, Shelley.
Yes, I know.
And maybe you'd want to reconsider considering what he's been through.
I've already committed to do that. And the other thing is I understand the point he was trying to make, that the violent films that are going out now, one after the other, I think is like a disease. I know when I was a kid, I lived in the fantasy world of the movies, and I think children still do. And you read about a kid, 12 years old, shooting a teacher, or an 8-year-old beating up a baby. Terrible things. And I think they don't believe in death. They see an actor in one television show, and the next night they see him in another. And I think that the movies violent television have a great deal of responsibility, and I fancy myself a liberal, and I never thought.
You always have been, by the way.
And I have been, and I never thought I would see the day that I think we need some kind of control, like we had the Catholic Legion of Decency and other things, and I think we need it again.
Except how about parents reinforcing with their children? And we've talked about this here with other people in your profession, actors and actresses. You know, what appears on the motion picture screen is in often cases not reality, but fantasy, and kids 8 years old really can't separate the two.
No, and you know, I've gone to the movies and you buy 3 or 4 tickets and they don't really look to see who's coming in.
No, they don't.
And when they go in, they go into 5 movie theaters, they go in one and then they sneak out and go to another one in these complexes. And I think children, especially when they're unhappy, when they're one-parent homes and latchkey children, live in the fantasy of films. I did it when I was a kid.
I know you did.
I would roller skate all over Brooklyn and pretend I was Jean Harlow. And I think the movie life I saw was realer than my own life because it was very lonely. My mother had to work and my father was in prison. For a year. He was stabbed in prison. Then he had a new trial and he was completely exonerated.
And he was in prison because?
Of an arson thing. He had never had anything wrong, and I think the fire was like this big, and nobody lived in the building.
He didn't burn the store down or something like that?
No, nothing like that.
Okay.
But it was Christmas, and firemen went into the store, and he had $5,000 worth of insurance, and he had a lot of money in the store. So it was kind of, as far as I'm concerned, a railroad thing. Yeah. But it's destroyed his life. And my mother spent a year getting money for lawyers. And it's always made me cognizant of what happens to the children when the fathers go to prison. And so, I've tried to do something about that a little bit.
Against this backdrop, then, the movies became your escape. But
it became my real life. Right. And my real life was, I ignored.
Hedy Lamarr and Gene Tierney.
Yeah. Jean Arthur. I was inclined to love the fine actors and actresses because something in me, Robert Montgomery, something told me they were the intelligent ones, not just the sex pots. And then when I found myself in Hollywood, I gave in to that and became a sex pot.
Yes, you did.
Now I'm a senior citizen sex pot. But, you know, that's what I saw. I did a wonderful picture with Ronald Colman called A Double Life, and signed with the studio because that's what you did those days.
Sure.
And that's what the kind of publicity they wanted me to have.
In fact, you became such a sex pot, a glamorous woman, that you had to campaign long and hard for a role in The Place in the Sun opposite Elizabeth Taylor. You had to convince a lot of people that you were more than just a pretty face and a great body on the screen. Not to take anything away from those two things.
Yes, I had George Stevens, who I adored. He told me the greatest thing about, I teach acting, and this is the greatest thing he told me. He said, acting in film is you think loud and you talk soft. And that's absolutely true. But he wouldn't let me come to Paramount. I met him at the Hollywood Athletic Club. I dyed my hair. I was in the middle of a sex pot movie, but I didn't care. And I dyed my hair, and I had my sister's clothes on. She's a nurse. And I had brown and white shoes and bobby socks, and I wrapped up a sandwich, and I just sat there in a corner with no makeup. And he walked in, and he looked around, looked at me, was looking for Shelly Winters, the glamour queen. And he sat there for about 15 minutes, and he picked up a Life magazine and looked at it and still looked around. And finally, just he was going to go, his head spun around, and he looked at me. And he just walked over and said, if I test you and you get the part, can I photograph you this way? And I said, Mr. Stevens, if you give me a part in American Tragedy, which was A Place in the Sun, you can photograph me anyway.
Yeah, great story.
And I tested and I got the role.
Did you ever? I have to pause for the sponsors. We're with Shelly Winters, currently appearing or soon to be seen in Portrait of a Lady. The toll-free is up and running, back with you, and the septuagenarian sex pot after these messages. You told a wonderful story to me during the break about people who see you in the motion picture and then who see you on Roseanne, and they ask you.
Well, as I said, A Place in the Sun was lost, I don't know, for 40 years, and then Ted Turner bought it, and now they show it, and I'm the factory girl in it. It's the one I was nominated Best Actress for. And the kids come up to me in Rexall's or wherever and say, are you Roseanne's grandmother? And I say, yes. My name is Shelly Winters. Hello. And they say, but are you the little factory girl in that picture, A Place in the Sun? I say, yes, and that's about 50 years ago. And you should read James Theodore Dreiser. He wrote other great books like that, too. And the concept of time, it's very hard for them to grasp. You know, one of them, they figure I had makeup on. But
how is the concept for you to grasp?
I enjoy whatever decade I'm in.
There you go.
I have a song. Shall I sing it to you?
Sure.
Oh, it's great to be alive at 75. Love is subsidized and free since 63. Though it takes all night to do what you used to do all night through. Oh, it's great to be alive at 75.
Bravo.
Life is always wonderful.
As grandmother used to say, every day above ground is priceless.
True. It's true.
Michael on the toll-free, Nashville, Tennessee. Hello.
How you doing?
Okay, Michael. Thanks for dialing us up tonight, kid.
I enjoy your show. I've been listening and watching since the 70s in Atlanta.
Thank you.
I have a question for Shelly.
Go ahead.
How are you doing, Shelly?
Pretty good.
Well, great. Congratulations on behalf of all film buffs on a great body of film work over the years. You are everlasting.
Thank you very, very much.
And my question is, we all know you're Marilyn Monroe's roommate and that you were there during the Va-Va-Va-Voom years. Tell us about discovering Sean Connery in London.
Well, let me first put in something that I forgot. I'm opening next week all over the country in a film called Heavy, which is wonderful, as a new young director, Jim Mangold. And one of the things that was terrible about Marilyn's life is she couldn't get older. The studio wanted to be the sex pot always. She was 36 when she died, and I think they wanted her to be 25, you know, in all the films she did. And that's one of the terrible things about being an actress. I was very lucky when George Stevens again, when he asked me to do Diary of Anne Frank, for which I won an Oscar,
Wonderful.
He said to me, if I was 33, he said, if you play this woman who's 53 at this time, you will act all your life. And he was right. And actresses have to go into character parts quite early to have a long career, and I'm ever grateful to him. And she wasn't allowed to do that. And she was a dear friend of mine.
Sex pots are time dated.
That's right. They still do it.
Now, what about Sean Connery in London, to which our friend...
I was ignoring that question.
Oh, you were? I noticed.
Sean Connery is a great friend of mine, and when I met him, he was a chorus boy in South Pacific. I have some friends in London called Peter and Mary Noble, and they never left Schwab's either. They give parties, and he used to write a column like Army Archer does, What's On in London, and whether people were important or not, if they were talented, they would have parties, and that's where I met him. And he was in the South Pacific, a chorus boy, and he had recently been driving a dray truck in Scotland, where he now owns banks.
Right.
But I got to know him in the biblical sense.
Yes, ma'am.
And he was a great pal. He was a wonderful pal. And one of the funny things...
He's a great man, by the way.
Oh,
I know
marvelous.
him. He's a terrific guy.
He's marvelous. I remember... He is Scotch, though. He did after Dr. No. He showed me Dr. No. We ate dinner at Schwab's drugstore, and he said, do you think I should sign for 5 pictures for this character? And I said, yes. He said, people tell me that I'm a fine actor and I should do this. And I said, do it. It will make you an international star. And later on, he sent me a wonderful beige mink coat that I still have. I can't bear to give it up. I know you're not supposed to have mink coats, but I just look at it in the
he's
closet.
Not completely Scotch, is he?
No, he's not. He's not.
Anyway, Michael, it's quite obvious we're never going to hear the story about Marilyn and Shelley and Sean Connery in London, but it was a great try on your part, and I did the best I could for you, pal.
One more thing to say.
Sure.
Shelley, I'm kind of a man of size, and I do an imitation of you. When I jump in the pool, I say, look, Shelley Winters, Poseidon Adventure.
That's not the only picture I drowned in.
You go, girl.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, good night, sir.
Bye-bye.
You mentioned you won the Oscar for The Diary of Anne Frank, as you did for Patch of Blue.
Yes.
When you read those scripts, when you first read those stories as they would be filmed on the screen, can you see Oscar possibility when you pick up the script the first time?
Well, I don't think so. I think you've got to know that you're with a fine director. The film that I just did with Jim Mangold, he's never directed a film. He was under contract to Disney, and they dropped him. And he got the film to me.
This is Heavy next month.
Heavy, which opens next week here, and it's open in New York, and got wonderful reviews, both for the picture and me. And I read it, and I met him, and I realized how talented he was. And they were only paying scale, which my agent was a little irritated by.
Could I ask you what scale is for? Would you mind telling me what that is?
I'm not sure. I think it's $1,100 a week or something like that.
Really? So it's not astronomical
no,
at all?
Not very much. When they take out
the taxes
10%
and everything,
and taxes, it's very. But I knew it was a very good picture, and it was a very difficult picture because it was up. It was called The Upstate Story, and now they call it Heavy. But heavy means in the sense, because I have a son who's overweight in it, and it's about smother love. It really is. But heavy means the sense that the kids say it. Boy, that's heavy.
Heavy, right, okay.
And this new kid, Liv Tyler, who's gorgeous, who is in it, and she, we rehearsed at my house in New York. I have an apartment in New York, and she would show up with her book. She was just in the last year of high school, and she was absolutely marvelous. And once we were doing a scene, and she was so young. Oh, I think her father's a famous rock and roll star. I can't remember his name, Tyler. Last name. And anyway, and I was doing this.
If I knew, I'd help you, but I don't.
All right. Anybody else around here know?
Steve, they've been dying to blurt it out. All right, settle down, fellas, please.
And while we were working, she suddenly looked at me and said, well, I was doing a scene with her, and she said, "Oh, Miss Winters, you're marvelous." And I said, looked at the director, he said, "Cut." I said, "Honey, you're in the scene." But she said, "It's in back of my head." I said, "But they can pick up what you say and they can see your head move. You're always in a scene, no matter where you are." She said, "I'll remember that. I'm sorry."
I don't mean to embarrass you in any way, but Johnny Carson put out these tapes of great moments on his shows.
Oh, did he?
And you're in one of them.
Oh, I would like to get it. Which one?
I'll have it sent to you.
Thank you.
And in one scene, you're on the air, you know, on the panel there with Carson and McMahon.
Yeah.
And you're looking at an actress and you say to her, "You know, I know you from something." You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. She's in All About the Southern Bells. She's a wonderful actress.
And if we could just...
Oh, I've gone blank.
Me too.
Annie Potts, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Anyway, I had been in a picture with her called King of the Gypsies, but she looked different. And I was and it was dreary and rainy. And he had been done interviewing me. The people used to interview people and they'd sit like in a circle. And I liked that because the actors would talk to each other. Anyway, I'm looking at her and I say, "Gee, I know her." And finally I said, "I know you." And she said, "Yes, Miss Winters, you do." He was interviewing her. I said, "Oh, I know. King of the Gypsies." She said, "Yes, we worked together for 10 weeks." 10 weeks. But I've done a lot of movies.
Yes, you have. We're with Shelly Winters, who can act. She'll be in Heavy around the country next week, and Portrait of a Lady opens when?
Oh, that's wonderful. So that's a Jane Campion picture who did the piano. That'll open in August.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Back with you on the toll-free as time permits with Shelly Winters after these messages. With the legendary Shelly Winters and Roger on the toll-free in Crestville, Maine. Hi, and welcome to CBS.
Hello.
Hello, Roger.
Hi, Shelly. Hi. Shelly, this is such an honor to be on with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shelly, you look wonderful tonight.
Thank you.
I loved you on the Batman TV show, and I'd like to ask, out of all the actors that you've worked with over the years, which actors, were the most and least well endowed of all the actors you've worked with? And I'd also like to know, did you and Marilyn Monroe and James Mansfield ever, roll around?
I don't think we want to hear this, Roger. But thanks for calling. No. I won't let you answer that question.
Thank you.
But you mentioned that you, and with a smile on your face, had known Sean Connery, and you said laughingly, in the biblical sense.
Well, this was a long time ago.
I understand.
We both were very young.
Yes, I understand. And by the way, I'm not knocking it. I'm cheering for it, okay?
Okay.
Now, In the first books, you know, you mentioned that you had several roommates.
Oh, you're not going to go into that.
No, I'm not going to go into that. I say you don't talk about that much anymore. I see you with others, and you don't talk about that much anymore.
That's, you know, youth is not wasted on youth, but, you know, all the hormones are going, and you certainly meet gorgeous men and when you work in this industry, and women that the men meet, and you work with very attractive people, and
things happen.
Yes, let's talk about something else.
No, but I wonder now. I mentioned that you're writing a third book, and I think it's called "I Never Left Schwab's."
Yes.
Meaning the legendary drugstore in Southern California, where
on Sunset and Crescent Heights.
Right, where.
Well, that's a state of mind.
Where legend has it, so many film careers were born and/or discussed.
But Schwab's was a place where stars, supporting actor, wannabes hung out, talented, untalented. But it was a place of excitement, and where writers brought scripts, and young producers. Blake Edwards used to hang out there. Many people.
Struggling young people in town, of which I was one at one time, would gather and read the trades together and find out where there was action in Hollywood that you could find work.
That's true.
Yeah.
And Marilyn and I used to go there quite often. And there was a very famous place in back of it called the Actors Lab, which was the California home of the group theater. And some of the greatest acting I ever saw was done there. I saw Lee Cobb do The Evils of Tobacco. I saw The Scoundrel with Norman Lloyd and, wonderful actress. I can't remember her name. She took my part in Awakening. That's why I can't. But really, some of the greatest acting I ever saw.
You know what I think would be interesting in the new book, if I could suggest a chapter?
Yes, please do.
All the people that you liked greatly that you didn't have affairs with, that were just, you know, friends. And
I knew you were going to do this. Believe me. I never had an affair with you. That was a terrible mistake.
Thank you. I could. that is a compliment that of high honor.
You think it's too late?
It's never too late, Shelly. Anyway, let me ask you here about, as you come up as a beautiful young woman, to use your own term, a sex pot. Did any producers ever try, the word I can think of here is the casting
Come
call.
on to you.
There you go.
Only one. I think if you're talented, their job, and their job's in jeopardy, is to find the best person, even now, for each role.
Sure.
And any casting director does that, doesn't really want you for the part. They want to have sex. And you have to know that, and young people should know that. And I was in New York, and longing to get back to California. I was freezing, and somebody came on with me like that, and I wanted to get back to New York. It's the only time ever anybody ever made a pass at me in this way, and he took me to Sardi's, and I thought about going up to his hotel with me, and on the way in Sardi's cloakroom, I threw up all over him. And
that would be a put down, wouldn't it?
Yes, yes.
that would be.
And but you know, they talk about that a lot in this business. But if you're talented, and if you study, and if you let producers see you in there's small plays done all over Hollywood and California, Southern California, and there's tapes now. Kids can make tapes. There's all kinds of ways to let producers see your work. They want to find their career's on the line. They have to find the best person for each role in a film. And I don't really think that goes on. When someone, male or female, is approached that way, they got to know they're not really being considered for the role.
Debbie on the toll-free Bayonne, New Jersey. Hello.
Hello, Tom.
Good evening, Debbie.
Good evening.
Does it go beyond good evening, Debbie, or do we? Is our date,
okay.
or is our date over?
I should listen to the TV, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Debbie.
Is your TV on, Debbie?
Yeah, should I turn it off?
Please turn it off. I mean, don't
Okay,
turn it off.
sorry
Just
about
turn the
that.
sound down. Turn the
Okay.
sound down. Yeah.
I wanted to ask Miss Winters what her favorite role was, and if there was ever a role that she really wanted that she didn't get.
Yes. My favorite role was A Place in the Sun, American Tragedy.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I guess the role that I wanted very much was Shirley MacLaine got it. Man with the Golden Arm, was that the one?
No, that was Kim Novak.
Kim Novak. Then it wasn't that one.
Okay.
Just a minute.
Terms of
Frank
Endearment?
Sinatra?
No.
No. We were younger. What did Frank
Some Came Running?
That's it.
Thank
Some
you.
Came Running. Thank you very much. There are quite a few I didn't get. One of the things when you're under contract, they have to borrow you, and Universal did not like to borrow me. When they saw Place in the Sun, the heads of the studio, they said, well, if we knew George Stevens was going to have you look that way, we wouldn't have let you him borrow you.
In other words, you were the glamour puss.
No, I wasn't.
Not in that picture.
Elizabeth Taylor was the glamour puss.
But I mean, what I'm saying to you is you were under contract to Universal.
Yes, and they wanted that image of me.
And you were the glamour puss for Universal.
Yeah.
So now when they see you in the George Stevens picture... And
they were very angry.
That's what I'm trying to...
Yes, they were very angry, and that film still lives. I mean, it's on 3 times a week, you know.
I saw it today.
Really?
Yeah.
In the afternoon?
Yes, on Bravo.
Oh, that's marvelous. Is that Ted? Have you seen me teach acting on Bravo?
Yes, I have.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
Are you thinking about being an actress?
No, I'm a waitress. I used to wait on you in the Oyster Bar years ago.
Oh, in New York?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, see a lot of plays, and maybe you'll think about it.
And Debbie, is she a good tipper?
And she's a great tipper.
Good.
She's
I was a waitress.
And where are you working now, Deb?
I'm working in a little Italian restaurant in Jersey City.
And
Rita and Joe's.
What is it again?
Rita and Joe's.
Good. How's the pasta? Good?
Oh, it's great.
Fabulous. Next
Come
time,
down and have dinner,
Next
Tom.
time I'm in New York, I'll come by.
Oh, I'm in New Jersey.
I know, but
Where in Jersey?
Jersey's right around the corner from New York, Debbie.
Okay.
Where in Jersey?
Jersey City.
Okay.
Jersey City.
All right. If I'm there, I'll look.
Okay, great.
Okay. Buonanotte, signorina.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
Good
Okay.
night.
So anyway, Heavy opens next week.
Yes.
And now this other one, Portrait of a Lady.
Yes, that's with Nicole Kidman, John Malkovich, Shelley Duvall, who's wonderful, Barbara Hershey, who's lovely. It's a Henry James novel about people in the 1870s, Americans who live in Europe. And I play a very cold woman. It's called Mrs. Touchett. And
Mrs. what?
John Gielgud, Mrs. Touchett. John Gielgud plays my husband.
Cold woman named Mrs. Touchett.
Mrs. Touchett.
Yeah.
John Gielgud is 94 in real life.
Yeah.
And I understood how she wanted the character, and he took a wonderful scene, 5 pages, a scene where he's dying, and he talks to his son, and he smoked cigarettes, and in the lights it looked beautiful. And when the camera was on me, I had to do something, so I looked at my watch like he was taking too long to die. And and when we went to the rushes, he was sitting next to me, Sir John Gielgud. He's very thin and his legs crossed, 94. And 2 pages I make mistakes. And I was really annoyed with him that he could go through 5 pages without one mistake. Mm-hmm. And he saw me take my watch and he looked at me like this. Really? And I said, Sir John, do you remember some years ago I was engaged to Farley Granger and you gave us an engagement party? And he said, Miss Winters, what year was this? And I said, about 1950. He said, I'm 94, really?
Anyway, we think the world of you here, and thanks for coming over. I know you busted your knee up a little bit, so heal up.
That's why I had to delay.
All right.
I exercised too much.
Don't be so long between pictures here, okay, kid?
Okay.
All right.
I'll be back soon.
Thank you, ma'am. Shelley Winters is the guest. You'll be seen next week in Heavy, and soon in The Portrait of a Lady. Next, Dick Schaap from Sports after these messages.
But I don't know whether it was a wise thing. I think every casting director in town hates me for that. But it's their way of they want to be sure before they present someone to a director or producer, and I guess that's what they have to do.
If they can't be sure with Shelley Winters, who can they be certain with, huh?
Well, my agent made me feel better because he told me Charlton Heston was up for a part, and they asked him to read.
Jeez.
So, I don't know. Maybe it's a new world.
In reading the entertainment papers here in Los Angeles today, there was a short item that you're giving away a Brando bust. You're getting rid of it.
Well, I'm not getting rid of it. It was in a place of honor in my house. It was a statue of his head that I've had for many years of him doing Mark Anthony. And he's a great actor. In the last few years, he's had terrible traumas in his life. I know that. But he went on Larry King's show and used anti-Semitic dialogue, which upset me terribly because I had great respect for him, and I know him since the Actor Studio days, which I think are 1948. When I was in Oklahoma and he was in A Streetcar Named Desire, everything I've known about him till this minute has been a videotape of the real woman, and they sent me the script. And then I had a sense that the casting lady was going to ask me to read from the phone call. And I felt that enough people knew about my acting. If Penny Marshall, who was the director, was going to ask me to read, that was okay with me. So at a last moment, I put my Oscar in my purse. And as I talked to her, I thought that she was going to do that. And I'd done 100 movies at that point, I guess. And I took it out of my purse and said, I think there's a lot of people around here who think I can act.
Bravo. About you whipping out an Oscar one time and saying I can act. Did she get it right?
Sort of, but you know, when was the last time we did this together? You were doing a show.
I did a show for ABC Radio, and we were together.
No, not radio, it was television.
The
Just
Tomorrow
you and
Show
me.
on NBC would be about 20 years ago now.
Is it that long?
Yes, it was.
Oh. Well, let me tell you what really happened.
You were 29 and I was 32.
Yes. All right. It was a film called Awakening,
Oh, sure.
and I got the sense that they sent me
There's no way.
Winters is a true star. During her career, she's appeared in over 150 motion pictures. She has twice won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her work in A Patch of Blue and the legendary The Diary of Anne Frank. She is the author of 2 best-selling autobiographies. A 3rd is on the way, and these days you can see her both in a recurring role on Roseanne and in 2 new movies entitled Heavy and The Portrait of a Lady. It's nice to see you not walking on the street in Beverly Hills, and thanks for joining us here at CBS tonight.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Last night there was a young actress here named Bonnie Hunt who won an award for the first time, and she told a story, and I don't know if it's true or not.